Hello, this is Paul Cheney from Spartan Design University, where learning is easy. Let's take a look at a couple of solutions to responsive web design as an introduction to this unit. First of all, the problem. Gone are the days when we could safely assume that most of our visitors would have at least a 1024 wide pixel screen. With smartphones and tablets soaring in sales, your visitors will be browsing the web with these screens starting as low as 320 pixels wide and up. Does your site look good on a phone or a tablet? You better know, because that's how more and more people are going to be viewing your site. Really quick history lesson. In the beginning, there was media equals. The idea was that you could identify the media type and then call a style sheet, and it would apply to that particular media type. The problem was that phone manufacturers did not get the memo, or else they completely chose to ignore it. Basically, it's not well supported. It's worthless to us as developers because it's insufficient to handle what's happening today. Let's look at these. You've got a TV style sheet. You've got a screen, which of course is great because everybody's using a computer screen. You've got embossed, braille, really. There's a useful one here called handheld. That's great. It's a good step in the right direction. The problem is, what's defined as handheld? Is it a phone? Is it a tablet? Is it a large tablet? Is it a phone landscape? Phone portrait? See, there's no way to really tell using handheld. So this one's insufficient. These are not really implemented. And so then we have to look for another solution. What happens when a phone pulls up a site that's not developed for responsive? Maybe it's an old 1990s or early 2000s, and people are still in the woods pretending that their site works great when it really doesn't. What you see is the page scaled to fit the screen. So the default action is, okay, you wanted this particular page, fine, we'll show it to you. It shrinks the page way, way, way down so it displays on the phone, and you can tell that you've pulled up a site. You can sell some basic colors. You can't read the text because it's way too small. Why do phones do this? Well, what else are they supposed to do? When the people who built phones thought of, okay, people are going to be looking at websites on these things, what should our default action be? And that's just what they selected. It's not a bad choice. It's just we have to deal with it as end users. The problem with shrinking the page way down is that in order for us to read it, we have to zoom in on it. And that introduces us to a terrible sin of horizontal scrolling to try and read lines of text or find things that we can't even see because they're down in the bottom right hand corner, and you have no idea they're there until you zoom out. You see there's something interesting down there, you zoom in, you try and find it, you try and read it. It's just a nightmare. So how have web developers addressed this problem of having small devices? Well, some people unfortunately just ignore it and hope it will go away. Yes, there are still people who develop sites using tables, heaven forbid, and they do not make responsive versions of their sites. Some people who have a lot of money will actually build a mobile application, and then they'll put one in the Apple Store. They'll put a phone version and they'll put a tablet version. Then they'll spend some more money and they'll build an Android one and stick it in the Android marketplace. Then they'll spend some more money. They might build one for the Kindle device or a Windows phone. By the time they're done, they've got very nice representation of their website on all these different stores, but they're into it quite a bit of money. So, other solutions for the rest of us. You could develop a separate website and use a little script to detect traffic. So if it's traffic from a desktop computer, you send them to one website. If it's traffic from a mobile phone, you send them to a different website. You may have seen these as m.dot or .mobi. It's a couple of common ones. They just change the URL a little bit and send you to a different site. Well, Google actually doesn't like this because now your site is split in half. Its credibility is split in half. The traffic is split in half. and it's just harder to track. The final solution is, of course, to use media queries. Now you're dealing with a single website. You're using media queries or CSS to rescale the site on the fly to fit a phone or a tablet or a desktop. It's the same website. Google loves them. It doesn't have to spend tons of money building lots of mobile applications. Well, there's a couple of different ways to do media queries. The first way is to use what's called a device width. Well, what is the device width of an iPhone? Well, it reports 320 pixels when it's in portrait mode. Well, what happens if you flip it to landscape mode? Now it reports a device width of, yes, it's still 320. So device width doesn't allow you to detect the difference between landscape and portrait. Now they have added a provision for orientation equals, and you can ask for landscape or portrait. The problem is it's not well supported, and you cannot rely on it 100% as a developer. And when you can't rely on something, you generally don't use it. It does allow us to isolate device groups, so we can make style sheets for phones and for tablets and for desktops, but it's just not the best solution. So let's look at another one. The next one is to ask for the screen width. Well, what's the screen width of an iPhone in portrait mode? It's 320. Well, if you flip it on its side, it now reports 480. So the nice thing about this is you can tell the difference between a screen width of 320 and a wider screen, depending on whether you have the old iPhone, the new iPhone, or an Android phone. It will report the actual width of the screen. That's cool, because now we can take our CSS and we can target this different than this and reliably get an optimized device representation and provide the user with an appropriate look and feel. Well, an iPad is going to report, once again, either 1024 or 768, depending on whether it's in landscape or portrait mode. What's the screen width of a desktop? Well, it depends on how big your screen is. All right, let's talk about the viewport for a minute. Well, what is the viewport? On a phone, the browser is going to fill up the entire screen, while on a computer, the browser can take up a portion of the screen, as you see here. Here's a piece of the screen that is not filled by the browser, which we could put something else over there. The viewport is the reported size of the browser width. So on a phone, the viewport here is going to be equal to the viewport or window width. Or it should be. The problem is that, as we said earlier, phones lie about how big they really are. And they pretend to be huge desktop screens, and then they shrink the viewport down to fit the screen width. And that's a problem for us as developers. So we have to find a solution. Because the phone does lie about its viewport width, you're going to see the tiny version of the desktop site on a phone, which makes it unlegible. So then you have to zoom in and engage the unforgivable vertical scroll to read each line. To prevent this problem, we add a meta tag in the head of our page. It's called name equals viewport. And we set the content equal to the width, device width. So in other words, take the device width, which might be 320 pixels, and set it to the width or the reported width. So it reports its true width. And then I've set this initial scale equals 1 so that it automatically starts at 100%. So now let's jump in and take a look at some of these examples on phones so we can see how they react in the real world.